Hello, aspirants. Welcome you all to Believers IAS Academy. And in this today's series, the continuation of the prelims high-yielding topics discussion as a part of Polity Lakshmikant, we'll be discussing about the important segment of the Indian Constitution, especially from the Lakshmikant, which is related to the parliamentary systems. We have seen numerous questions coming from this particular topic, the parliamentary systems, which pretty much subsumes your parliamentary system of government, presidential system of government, federal governments, about interstate relations, right? And also, pretty much about the center-state relations. So this is what we will be discussing as a part of parliamentary systems. But today's video specifically will be about the discussion of the parliamentary system versus the presidential system. So, the thumb rule, we have 10 questions and we will be discussing each of the questions independently. So, moving on to the first question, which constitutional provisions establish parliamentary system in the union and the state levels? Very important articles. So, most of the students know about that particular article, which is important at the union level, at the state level, the central level. But at the state level is also important. So at the central level, it is the Article 75 and 74 of the Indian Constitution, which talks about the responsibility, or let's say the Council of Ministers, to aid and advise the President, and also talks about that the Council of Ministers or the executive who are directly responsible to the Parliament or the legislature. And Article 75.3 talks about the collective responsibility, as we discussed with respect to Lok Sabha. Next is the same two articles with respect to state legislature. We have 163 and 164. First, which says Council of Ministers to aid and advise the governor. And then we have 164 subclause 2, collective responsibility to the Legislative Assembly. UPSC's very favorite, because this is the fundamental bedrock of the parliamentary system of government, because it talks about the accountability that the parliamentarians have, accountability that the executive has. So basically, the collective responsibility of all the executives, it is to the Lok Sabha. And even if it is asking, or even if it is saying that it is parliament, even then the answer is correct. But most precisely, even inside the parliament, it is the Lok Sabha, which is absolutely important. And this is to make sure that checks and balances and the accountability of the executive is maintained, or let's say the whole of the legislature, the Council of Ministers, are maintained. And most precisely with respect to the executive, there are a lot of tools. Like, for example, there is question hour, right? Debates, especially in the parliaments, during the sessions, and also the no confidence motion. So these are all some of the tools which the Constitution has given to make sure that the accountability of these executives are also ensured. So Articles 163, 64 and 64 subclause 2 with respect to state legislature, very important. So these provisions constitutionally embed the parliamentary form, means they form the basis, very important. Next, on what basis are democratic governments classified as parliamentary or presidential? So this directly talks about the classification of those democracies based on whether they are parliamentary in form or presidential in form. So the classification can be made of four important aspects. One is the relation, how the relation they share with respect to the executive and the legislature. The method of selecting the executive is, are the executives directly nominated, or the executives are elected from the common people, or let's say the common men, they elect their representatives and they form the government, legislature, and from the legislature, the Council of Ministers, the executive is nominated, or is it formed? So is it based on that kind of a system which we follow in India, or is pretty much like USA, where the executives, especially the president, he has his own council of, he has his own executives, right, who supports him. So the kitchen cabinet, what we call. So those executives are completely different than the Indian parliamentary system. Next is the degree of separation of fusion of powers. So what kind of powers that these two distinctions, hold, and the responsibility of executive to the legislature. So based on these four fundamental aspects, we can decide whether a particular democracy is parliamentary or in presidential, right? Or is it presidential in form? So if the executive is drawn from legislature and is accountable, we classify them as parliamentary form of government, similar to India. And if executive is separately elected and independent, we call it the presidential form of government. The example is USA. And very important, you have to keep in mind some of the important countries with respect to who follow the parliamentary system of government, who follow the presidential system of government. So the parliamentary system of government, you have Britain, there's India. Some of the important examples, we have Canada, and we have Japan. With respect to presidential system of government, we have USA, we have Sri Lanka, right? And then we have Brazil, and also we have Russia. Okay, so these are some of the important examples with respect to the parliamentary form of government and the presidential form of government. Next question: why is the parliamentary system called a responsible government? The answer is very simple. Executive is politically accountable to the legislature through various means, as we discussed, through question hours, through debates, and also through no confidence motions. And Council of Ministers remain in office only so long as it enjoys majority support. Means the majority has to be established on the floor, right? And then they can also be removed through no confidence motion if they do not have the sufficient majority. So responsibility is continuous and real and is not merely formal. Means it is not simply on paper that the responsibility of these Council of Ministers is to the legislature, but rather it is practical because the majority has to be proved on the floor if no motions, no confidence motion is passed against that particular political party. Next is, what are the key features of the parliamentary system? Right, these are some of the important key features you have to keep in mind. Very important, you have to by heart. First is dual executive. They have a real head and also a nominal head, and it is mostly the majority party rule. And the Council of Ministers, they are collectively responsible to the legislature. Means they have the collective responsibility concept. Then political homogeneity means all the ministers or the part of executive inside the Council of Ministers, they come from a single political party, major political party. Next is the leadership of the Prime Minister as opposed to the President in the presidential form of government. Close relationship between executive and legislature. Dissolution of lower house is possible, right? Two instances. Even executive can request, like for example, the Prime Minister can request the president to dissolve the government, and also likewise the chief minister can request the governor to dissolve the respective state government as well, right? So the dissolution of lower house is possible. Secrecy of cabinet proceedings. So basically these ensure accountability and flexibility. So these are some of the important key features of the parliamentary system of government. Next is, what are the foundation principle, bedrock of the parliamentary system? It is the collective responsibility of the Council of Ministers to the lower house, meaning what? Means that the cabinet stands or falls together. They either sink together or sail together, and it ensures unity and accountability and maintains legislative control over executive. So often called the cornerstone of parliamentary democracy. So all of these are very important. These things will be very handy for you to write mains answers also, right? Anything related to parliamentary system, they are either the bedrock of the Indian parliamentary system, or let's say even like let's say they are the cornerstone of the parliamentary democracy. So all of these are pretty much correct. Sixth question: does the executive have the power to dissolve the legislature? The answer is absolutely yes. Prime Minister can advise the president to dissolve Lok Sabha, and Chief Minister so and so, if can advise the government to dissolve the state assembly as well. And next one, what are the defining features of the presidential system? Very important. Single executive. President is both head of state and government. Unlike in the presidential unlike in the parliamentary system of government where we have two heads. One is the nominal head and the real head. Real head who completely holds the power of the executive, who appoints the Council of Ministers, who is basically the head of the government. Then we have the nominal head, who is just the ceremonial head, like the president of the country. Next is the separation of powers. Fixed tenure of executive means the executive, they have, or let's say they hold the power only because of their tenure. But on the other hand, in terms of the parliamentary system of government, the executive holds their power or the authority of the power, they get it from the constitution. Right, from the constitution, or more or less from, let's say, they are accountable to the Lok Sabha, right? Accountable to the Lok Sabha, and also they are pretty much collectively responsible for their actions to whatever they do. So basically, their actions, they are accountable to their own actions, because if the actions that they are taking, the executive in the parliamentary system of government, if it is not in accordance to the constitution or not in accordance to the guidance set by the democracy, then obviously they can be removed, right? No confidence motion and all of those things. Rather, however, the executive from the presidential system of government, they do not have such bindings from the constitution whatsoever, right? They have few things, but mostly they are bound by the tenure. For example, the USA's president, the tenure is fixed 4 years. That's all, unless some grave constitutional mistakes, some grave mistakes happen from that particular president's side. No actions can be taken against that particular person, and there's clear differentiation of separation of powers, executive to legislature. Congress is completely different from the president. President is not part of the Congress, basically. So Congress is responsible to only legislate, to only create laws, and ultimately, president, being the executive, he enacts it, right? He implements it. So basically, that's what is the point says. An executive not responsible to legislature. We discussed. President elected independently. That's also there. A separate college, electoral college is created only for the president election. So if you think of USA, it is the proper example for the presidential system of government, and no dissolution of legislature by executive. So unlike the parliamentary system where the prime minister and the governor can, prime minister and the chief minister can request the president and the governor simultaneously. We don't have anything like that in the presidential system of government. And checks and balances mechanism. So basically, this is to create a checks and balances mechanism, which is pretty much there in the presidential system. So stability, but less flexibility. So there is stability, but not much of flexibility, pretty much like a parliamentary system. Next question. Why did India adopt the parliamentary system? How does it differ from the British model? So the answer is reasons for adoption: familiarity due to colonial experience. Don't have to explain that. Ensures accountability. Suitable for diverse society, avoids authoritarian concentration of power, and flexible and adaptation. However, I have a question for you. Which parliamentary system did India adopt? Is it the British model or the Canadian model? Please do let me know in the comment section. Moving on to the next aspect, the difference between the constitution, the parliamentary system in India to the Britain. We have some of the important points you have to keep in mind. First is with respect to India, we have a written constitution. Britain has an unwritten constitution. India follows a federal system, and Britain follows the unitary system. And in India, we have a system of judicial review. And in in Britain, it is the parliament supremacy. Like parliament is sovereign, right? In India, president is nominal head, and here we don't have a president, but we have a monarchical, monarch as a supreme head. And in India, the constitution is supreme, and here the parliament is supreme. So coming to this, there's another important point. Is parliament in India sovereign? The answer is no. The parliament is not sovereign in India, but however, the parliament is sovereign in Britain, right? Next one. India adopted the spirit, but adapted constitutional supremacy. So the spirit of the spirit of parliamentary system was adopted by Britain, but the way India adjusted to the parliamentary system that it is currently following is totally different. Please do let me know in the comment section which exactly from where India adopted it. Is the Indian Parliament sovereign like the Britain Parliament? We discussed, no, it is not. Indian Parliament is powerful but not sovereign because there are certain limitations to the Parliament. One is it is bound by the Constitution. Next is there is something called as judicial review, a very important tool in the hands of Supreme Court, which keeps the checks and balances. Then there is federal division of powers, right? Federal division of powers between the state, center. And then we have fundamental rights, and we also have the basic structure doctrine, which puts certain restrictions on the parliament, right? Next, the sovereignty lies with constitution, not the parliament. 10th one, compare parliamentary and presidential systems across core dimensions. So these are some of the important core dimensions: executive relationship, responsibility, membership, political system stability, flexibility. So take a screenshot. I'll just, you can just pause the video. Take a screenshot. Very important table this is, and it is, more than sufficient that you know. So we'll just simply take a look. So executive, in parliamentary, we have dual executive, the real head, nominal head, and in presidential, it's only single. Relationship, there is fusion of powers, and in presidential, there's clear separation of powers. Executive, the president is completely different from, or let's say different is not the right word, but separated from the Congress. He has no role whatsoever in the legislature. Next, responsibility, executive is accountable. Here, executive is not accountable. Membership, ministers from legislature, but here separate. And in terms of political system, in parliamentary system, it is a majority rule, but here it is the fixed executive. Next, in terms of stability, it is less stable, and here it is more stable. because less stable. Why? Because if the particular political parties fail to prove its majority on the floor, the government is like collapsed. And even if the prime minister advises the president to dissolve, even then the government is collapsed, right? And there are a lot of things. Even if, let's say, any particular important bill, money bill, if it does not pass or if money bill fails, even then the government should dissolve, right? So a lot of things are there. So that's the reason why it says that stability is more in the presidential system rather than the parliamentary system. Next, in terms of flexibility, yes, we are following the parliamentary system, and there's very huge flexibility in terms of how it is functioning. However, it is very low in the presidential system. So those are some of the important 10 questions which will cover your entire parliamentary versus the presidential system of government. Very important for the examination. Please do pay attention to this particular chapter and also all the chapters relating to parliamentary system. Well, anyway, we will cover all of them within the 10 questions limit in the upcoming series. Until then, stay tuned. This is Madan Gopal. Have a wonderful day.